So I have great pleasure now of inviting one of our prominent engineers, engineer W.D.A.S. Vijaypala. I'll give a very brief summary of his CV. Engineer Anuru Vijaypala is an electrical engineer who graduated from the University of Moratuwa. He served in the private sector electrical engineering industry for 15 years before joining the Department of Electrical Engineering at the University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka, as a senior lecturer in year 2006. During his time in the industry, he has been a transformer design engineer and a factory manager, diesel power plant manager, and small hydro power project manager. He has involved in a large number of engineering projects in Sri Lanka and a few abroad. He obtained his Master of Engineering degree in 2001 from the University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka. He has been a chartered electrical engineer since 1996 and he is a fellow of the Institution of Engineers, Sri Lanka, and an international professional engineer. He is also a member of the IEEE. He has served as Vice Chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board, Vice Chairman of Sri Lanka Energies Private Limited, Director of Lanka Coal Company Private, and a Director of the Trincomalee Coal Power Private Limited, and Chairman of National Engineering and Research and Development Centre of Sri Lanka. Presently, he is the Chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board, which is responsible for generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity in Sri Lanka. In addition, he is serving as Chairman of LTL Holdings, that is Lanka Transformer Limited Holdings, Sri Lanka Energies Private Limited, and Trincomalee Power Company Limited. He is also a member of the boards of Sri Lanka Electricity Company, that is LECO, Lanka Electricity Company, and Lanka Coal Company Private Limited. On a personal note, I have to add that Engineer Vijaypala and I, about 5 years ago, co-authored a paper which was published in Sri Lanka Economic Review. And if my name of the journal is wrong, please correct me. So I invite with great humbleness, and I am honored to invite Mr. Vijaypala, Chairman Ceylon Electricity Board, to deliver his lecture.
Thank you, Professor Perra. Distinguished presenters today, sitting in the head table, invited professors, academic staff of KTU, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The topic I am speaking on today is environmental responsibilities of power and energy professionals. So in this presentation, I am sharing with you my 10 years experience in teaching subjects on energy and environment at University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka. Engineering has reached far heights since the Industrial Revolution some 150 years back. Inventions of electricity, internal combustion engine, digital computer, mobile communication, just we heard a lot just a while ago. The internet and similar many others have built a world beyond the imagination of 10 Arthur C. Clarkes put together. Further up, the marvels of the medical sciences have challenged every conceivable illness except a few such as AIDS. Final result of all these has been an outburst of population, which in turn has caused an spiraling increase in the demand on all resources and especially on energy. Figure 1 shows the world population growth for the last 10,000 years, and it is interesting to note that 2,500 years ago, when Lord Buddha was living and preaching Buddhism, the world population had been just under 100 million people. And it is also interesting to note, 200 years back, the world population has been around 1 billion, and during just the last 200 years, the population has exploded to 7 billion mark. So there is a profoundly strange turning taking place in the human history. Even under moderate growth scenarios, UN estimates the population to cross the 10 billion mark by the end of this century. The enormous pressure exerted by this huge population on the environment food supply, and energy is unprecedented. And repercussions of climate change are felt all over the world. Meters thick snowfalls in North America, flash winds, flash rains, flash floods in many countries, including Sri Lanka. Heat waves in Europe, India, and other countries are not the same news stories we were used to hear some 30 years back. The fifth assessment report, AR5, on climate change was issued by Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change last year, and it conclusively blames greenhouse gases for causing global warming and the climate change. Engineers and scientists working in the energy sector can play a decisive role in controlling GHG emissions and finding alternative ways to keep the energy demand met. In this context, though Sri Lanka is a low carbon emitting country, it needs to be conscious of the local as well as the global responsibilities for the sake of future children, who will remember us as far-sighted great parents of the 21st century. Our planet, beautiful to look at from space, planet Earth is the third from the sun in the solar system. Astronauts are yet to find a similar planet having conducive conditions for life, though their explorations have extended millions of kilometers into the space. On this globe, with an average diameter of about 12,700 kilometers, human beings live at the bottom of the atmosphere. It is taken for granted that the atmosphere to be inexhaustibly large and having comparable dimensions with the Earth. Unfortunately, this gut feeling is wrong, and the atmosphere is surprisingly thin. Scientists have estimated that 75% of the total mass of the atmosphere is within the first 11 kilometers. First 11 kilometers distance is where all weather happens, most of airplanes take their flights, etc. It is into this thin atmosphere humans started to emit greenhouse gases since the start of Industrial Revolution. If you look at the history, as indicated in figure 3, world has been carbon neutral until recent times. We can see the green line until 1850 or little later that, the world has been using almost only biomass. Biomass catches carbon dioxide through photosynthesis from the atmosphere and release the same when burnt. Unfortunately, by today, the contribution from biomass for energy generation has become less than 10%. And oil, coal, gas, and all of which are fossil fuels, have taken over. Contribution from nuclear is also limited due to socio-political and security issues. The contribution from new renewable sources such as wind, solar, and small hydro is not significant. Large-scale utilization of fossil fuels started only after the invention of steam engine, steam turbine, and the internal combustion engine. Automobiles, steam and diesel electric trains, as well as production of electricity, unleashed the fossil fuels, what we call the sleeping ghost, from its underground caves. However, not until the last part of the 20th century, the scientists were able to relate greenhouse gases as the culprit for the warming of the planet. The greenhouse effect. Part of the solar radiation coming onto Earth is reflected back by the clouds, the Earth's surface, etc., and part is absorbed by Earth as well as the particles in the atmosphere. Earth radiates this heat back in the form of infrared radiation, most of which generally end up in the space. This heat is absorbed by molecules such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and they are re-radiated, the heat in all directions, and part of that comes back to the Earth, what we call the greenhouse effect. Thus, these gases act as a greenhouse, and more such gases are present in the atmosphere, more will be the heat retained, increase in the temperature of the Earth. Starting from Industrial Revolution some 150 years back, fossil fuels are burnt in bulk, and the carbon dioxide concentrations has steadily increased. We can see in this picture the relationship and the correlation between the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere and the rate at which we have been used fossil fuels since 1800. So as the figure also shows the carbon dioxide concentration, which was about 280 parts per million before the 19th century, which has increased to about 350 million by now. And it is steadily on the increase, as scientists have estimated as a rate of about 1 ppm every year. The figure 6 depicts the average global temperature increase during the last 150 years, which shows a definite tendency for the continued increase. And this figure shows the rate of release of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution due to anthropogenic activities, that are the various activities we do for power generation, etc., by the human beings. In 1950, the carbon dioxide rate has been 5 billion tons a year. And just in 60 years, in 2010, the rate has increased by 7-folds to 35 billion tons a year. Remember, by now we are releasing over 35 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. So impacts due to climate change are quite emphatic. Warming of atmosphere, heat waves, melting of glaciers, sea level rise, extreme weather, ocean acidification are some major impacts of climate change. Warming is obvious. We had never heard of heat waves when we were young. Heat waves in India and some parts of Europe in summer have become a norm. 2003 European heat wave was the worst, causing the death for several tens of thousands. Extreme precipitation is already in experience. The precipitation rates are often higher than discharge rates of drainage system, causing flash floods in many parts of the world, including Sri Lanka. Melting of glaciers pose two problems. One is the obvious sea level rise. Second is the reduction of what we call albedo, the so-called reflection of incoming solar radiation back to space by its white surface. When sunlight falls on water, most of the heat will be absorbed. Kyoto Protocol. I think we all have heard about the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol is an agreement among the industrialized countries. They would reduce their collective emissions of greenhouse gases on average by about 5% compared to the year 1990 emissions of those countries. The agreement was signed in 1997 and came into full force after ratification in 2005. Although United States signed the agreement, I think we all know that the US is almost the biggest polluter in the world, being a heavy energy consuming country. And they signed the agreement, but they refused to ratify it and later withdrew from the Kyoto Protocol. The reductions were to come during the period 2008 to 2012, but by 2012, even countries like Japan, Canada, and Russia withdrew from the protocol, stating they cannot afford the committed reductions of greenhouse gas emissions. Post-analysis indicates that major drawback of the Kyoto Protocol was that it had no compulsory targets for India and China, the developing countries, which subsequently became the major greenhouse gas emitters due to high economic development rates and massive population in the two countries. The year 2012, where we should, under the Kyoto Protocol, the reduction targets should have been achieved, dawned and dusked, and so did the commitments of Kyoto Protocol. The pending argument, the argument that the two parties, developed countries and the developing countries, are having at the moment. So developed countries, the industrialized countries, argue that the countries should be allowed to emit greenhouse gases according to the present pattern, and reduction should come thereon. While developing countries, especially China and India, with over 1 billion people each, argues that it should be based on per capita emissions, that is, on the argument that everybody has the same right to emit to the atmosphere. However, different countries and regions have set their own targets for renewable penetration. For example, EU has a first target of 20% of electricity from renewables by 2020 and a second target of 50% by 2050. Sri Lanka has similar target of achieving 10% of electricity by 2015 and 20% by 2020. And remember, all these are voluntary targets, and we don't have a binding agreement or protocol among the countries yet. And UN Chairman Ban Ki-moon was hopeful that such an agreement is possible by 2016, but it to be seen whether it will be materialized. Energy sector conversion efficiencies. Although there have been mild improvement in energy conversion efficiencies, groundbreaking efficiency increases have not been made during the last several decades. Average efficiency of electricity generation remains around 40%, and average automobile fuel efficiency lies in the range of 10 to 15 kilometers per liter, while the vehicle engine efficiencies are around 15 to 20%. Burning of coal in power plants emit on average about 0.95 kilogram. That is almost 1 kilogram for every kilowatt hour it generates. Similarly, other fuels also emit varying amount as shown in the table. Similarly, carbon dioxide emissions when fuel is burnt in automobiles and other equipment are shown in table 2. That is, when we burn 1 liter of petrol in our car, we emit almost 2.3 kilograms of carbon into the atmosphere. So then look at how many liters of petrol you need a day, and multiply it by 2.3, and remember that amount we cause to emit every day. New renewable energy and nuclear. Solar, wind, small hydro, biomass, and a few similar other sources are categorized as NRE sources, new renewable energy sources, and scientists have second thoughts in including large hydro into this group. This exception is due to the involvement of a reservoir. Usually large hydro plants have a reservoir, which has many environmental impacts, and the latest findings indicate these reservoirs are sources of methane, which is a greenhouse gas, due to perishing of submerged vegetation. Nuclear is expected to play a vital role, but with half a century of experience, still the contribution from nuclear is under 3%. Chernobyl and Fukushima accidents have made such public opinions that many nuclear countries have taken decisions to entirely stop nuclear programs and even to decommission existing plants. I think the Germany is also, in the same group. They are also either decommissioning or getting away from nuclear. Solar energy, the most commonly available energy source in the world, has seen vast strides during the last 10 years. Photovoltaic panel prices have slumped down, and concentrated solar power, what we call CSP plants, are getting popular in many countries. The biggest hurdle to overcome in PV is the unacceptably low efficiency of energy conversion. Most commercial panels with right prices have efficiencies in the range of 10 to 12%. This is where the scientists have to step in and come out with innovative techniques to improve the efficiencies. CSP technology provides heat storage, and thereby the operation of the power plant can be extended to night hours as well. The drawback of PV power plants is that they operate for a limited number of hours during the day, and the storage technologies are very expensive. Thus, engineers and scientists are called upon to develop the better battery technologies and also economical battery technologies for efficient and economical energy storage. Development in wind power sector has also been significant. Wind has the drawback of being seasonal as well as intermittent. In the off-season, the grid operator has to have alternative sources to meet the demand, and the intermittency calls for ready hot reserve power, which is expensive. Pump storage power plants provide the solution against the intermittency, but it also makes an additional cost. Biomass, being a carbon neutral source, has great potential in aiding combating the climate issue. Concept of planned energy plantations are taking off now, and sustainability of such plantations are being tested. Biofuels such as palm oil and ethanol are also substitute for fossil fuels. Tidal energy, wave energy, ocean thermal energy, etc. are yet not in the leading commercial operation due to either the resource limitations or technological limitations. Again, scientists and engineers have to make new innovations as how to convert these sources to electricity economically. The solutions. To arrest the climate change issue, there is one and only one option, that is to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. Of course, this is easily said than done. IPCC has estimated that if global average temperature increases to be limited to within 2 degrees by the end of this century, the total cumulative carbon dioxide emissions since 1870 has to be kept under 2,900 gigatons. As shown in the figure, from 1870, remember 150 years ago, to 2011, world has already emitted 1,900 gigatons of carbon dioxide. For the balanced period of 89 years from now to end of the century, the available quota is only 1,000 gigatons of carbon dioxide. And as we saw in the previous figure, our consumption rate is, our emission rate is about 35 gigatons per year. So which means we can go ahead only in 30 years, we will finish this 1,000-ton quota. And therefore, we will never be able to, at this rate, to limit the temperature increase to 2 degrees by the end of the century. So thus, drastic changes are required in the way people live, the way electricity is generated, the way temperature, the way transportation is done, and so on. If global average warming is to be limited to 2 degrees, it should be remembered that world is suffering from the present problems only with just 1 degree's average temperature rise. Sri Lanka can be proud that the country has reached $3,000 per capita GDP while still having low per capita emission of 0.6 tons of carbon dioxide. Thus, in the world as well as in the region, Sri Lanka is a low carbon emitting country. Therefore, Sri Lanka can justify that it has a natural right to emit more. For the economic development, country needs cheap energy, and there are no options but to go for cheap power generation technologies such as coal power generation. Sri Lanka can also look at the problem in broader terms. Industrialized countries, when they were emitting carbon dioxide for their cheap power, the world was unaware of the climate change problem or its cause, the greenhouse effect. It was not until late 1980s that IPCC came out with the first assessment report indicating that it is most likely that GHGs are causing the climate change. To the argument that everybody has the same right to emit, people living in the warm countries can be fairer in their thinking that those who are living in colder countries, such as in Scandinavia, need more energy for mere survival, and probably they deserve a better carbon quota. But one thing is clear: whoever emits, the problems are common to all. Whether a polluter or not, every country will have to take their share of consequences. A low-emitting country can be unlucky and may have to face the hardest environmental calamities. Carbon footprint. From the day one is born, starting from the energy needed to produce the very napkin that it is covered, until his coffin is burnt one day, one keeps on emitting carbon dioxide in numerous ways from the cradle to the coffin. When anything new is used, be it a cloth, pen, shoe, book, paper, car, simply anything, some kilowatt hours, some energy is used for that purpose. So therefore, we can count how much carbon dioxide is emitted from the day one is born until he is died. That is the carbon footprint one leaves in the world. And the smaller the carbon footprint, the lower is the effect that he makes on the environment and the global issues. Therefore, it is the duty of all to make sure that that we as individuals and corporates or the organizations and then the countries, we all keep our carbon footprint as small as possible. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.